Welcome to This Explainer. Grab your magnifying glass and step right past the yellow tape, because today we are arriving at the scene of a botanical crime. We're going to figure out what is really destroying your garden. We're going to look at the evidence, challenge some long-held assumptions, and unmask the true culprits behind plant decline. Let's dive in. So, picture this. You're out in your yard, you spot a wilting, discolored leaf. And right there on the stem is a crawling insect or maybe a nasty patch of fungus. Your immediate gut instinct is to ask, why is this pest killing my beloved plant? I mean, it's just human nature to blame the most visible suspect, right?
Well, here is a massive plot twist straight from our sources. Listen to this quote: "Insects and pathogens rarely attack healthy plant tissue." Yeah, you heard that right. The bugs and the fungi you see, they're usually just the opportunistic accomplices. They arrive late to the scene, basically scavenging on plant tissue that was already severely weakened by something else entirely.
The invisible mastermind pulling the strings behind the scenes is almost always abiotic stress. Now, abiotic is just a fancy word for non-living, environmental, or cultural factors. We're talking extreme sunlight, sudden freezing temperatures, harsh winds, or brutal lack of precipitation. These are the heavy-hitting forces that actually break down a plant's natural defenses first, literally rolling out the red carpet for those secondary pests. Okay, so let's break this down a bit more. To make sense of all this, our sources point to a conceptual model called the disease circle. It basically splits plant damage right down the middle. On one side, you've got the biotic, the living organisms like viruses, bacteria, and insects. And on the flip side, the abiotic, non-living stressors. The golden rule of plant diagnostics is that you have to systematically rule out the non-living abiotic side before you ever assume an infection is contagious and go reaching for the chemical sprays. So who exactly are these non-living culprits? Honestly, they are shockingly common. Just run through this lineup of usual suspects. You've got girdling roots that literally starve a plant just because it was planted too deeply. There's mechanical bark damage, from an overzealous pass with a lawnmower. You might have standing water just drowning the root zone, or the exact opposite, a plugged drip irrigation emitter causing a silent drought. We even see toxic high soil salts building up from heavy fertilizer use. None of these are contagious diseases, but every single one of them will slowly kill a plant.
Section 1. The modus operandi. Understanding spatial and temporal clues. So, how do we actually differentiate the MO of a living pest from a non-living stressor out there in the real world?
First up, you have to check the spatial distribution at the crime scene. Biotic living diseases tend to spread sporadically. They kind of hop from one plant to the next as the pathogen reproduces, so the damage looks scattered or clustered. Plus, it usually only attacks one specific family of plants. Abiotic damage, on the other hand, hits uniformly. It follows mechanical lines, like an irrigation row, or it strikes a massive area all at once. If your lettuce, your tomatoes, and your weeds are all suddenly showing the exact same symptoms at the exact same time, you are almost certainly dealing with a non-living abiotic problem, like a chemical drift or a severe weather event.
Next, you want to look at the timeline. Abiotic injuries happen suddenly, and here's the kicker: they do not progress. Let's say there's a nasty frost or a chemical drift on day 1. By day 2, that tissue damage is immediate and totally visible. But check back on day 14, the symptoms haven't spread to the new growth at all. The event is over, done. This is in stark contrast to biotic diseases, like fungal leaf spots, which progressively colonize new tissue and just keep getting worse week after week. Section 2. The physical evidence. Reviewing visual symptoms of abiotic stress. This is where it gets really fascinating, because we can use actual physical evidence to catch these non-living culprits red-handed. Take a classic symptom known as scorch, for example. When you see a witch hazel leaf with yellowing and browning moving from the outside margin inward, it's incredibly easy to misdiagnose it as a fungal pathogen. Gardeners do it all the time, but in reality, it's caused by abiotic drought. The environment simply isn't providing enough water, or maybe the roots are too damaged to transport it to the edges of the leaves, so the tissue just dies from the outside in.
Then there's a symptom called rugosity. It's a fun word, but the damage is anything but fun. It looks like severe puckering, quilting, and heavy distortion of the leaf texture. Now, while viruses can sometimes cause this, in many backyard gardens, rugosity is very frequently the result of abiotic chemical drift. If a weed killer was applied nearby on a windy day, even microscopic drift can cause this shocking distortion on your broadleaf plants.
And hey, this isn't just an outdoor problem.
For indoor houseplant enthusiasts, comparing these factors is incredibly revealing. It is crazy to think that totally opposite abiotic factors, like overwatering versus underwatering, can produce the exact same visual symptoms. Both can cause lower leaves to yellow, both cause wilting, and both cause brown leaf margins. It just proves that you absolutely cannot diagnose a plant problem by looking at a single symptom in isolation. You have to look at the entire environment.
Section 3. The interrogation. Diagnosing the underlying stress. To actually solve the case, you have to systematically interrogate the environment, instead of just reacting to the symptoms you see on the surface.
You've got to think of yourself like a plant doctor taking a patient's history. Build your checklist with these 4 vital questions. 1. Exactly when was the problem first noticed? 2. Was the onset sudden or gradual? 3. What percentage of the plant is actually affected? And 4, which is perhaps the most revealing, are unrelated plants nearby also suffering? If the answer is yes, you are definitely hunting an abiotic stressor.
But remember, sometimes the call's coming from inside the house, right? You have to honestly review your own cultural habits as a gardener, because the hard truth is, loving a plant to death with excessive amounts of water or a heavy-handed dose of fertilizer creates the exact abiotic stress that damages roots and invites those secondary pests we talked about at the beginning. Overcare is just as dangerous as neglect.
So, we've unmasked the real mastermind behind most garden failures, and it completely changes how we look at our plants. We know for sure now that the bug is usually just the symptom, not the disease. So, I'll leave you with this provocative question to chew on for your next horticultural investigation. Next time your plant looks sick, will you just blindly blame the bug, or will you step back and interrogate the environment? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and happy sleuthing out there in the garden.